All right, we are joined today from a special appearance with Sam Duncan, Dash Carolinas over in the Raleigh market, actually. So mixing it up a little bit. We've talked about Charlotte a few times. We're going to talk about Raleigh today. Sam's been in real estate for 7 years as a full-time professional. In that short amount of time, he's had the pleasure of helping over 180 families buy and sell real estate in those 7 years. His brokerage has about 200 plus agents across the Carolinas in it. And over the last couple of years, Sam has consistently been in the top five of that brokerage, including coming in as the number one agent in his brokerage last year. So, Sam, welcome. Glad to have you. Look forward to talking about Raleigh with you.
Yeah, excited to be here, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, sure thing. So let's start with the first question here. What trends are you noticing in kind of the greater Raleigh area when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, I would say recently it's been more of a downward trend. I think it was maybe last month. Last month being, I guess, July. Home prices on average in Wake County, or the median home price in Wake County went down, I think 35 grand, which is a lot. We haven't seen many swings like that in a long time. The month before it was up like 20 or 25 grand. So it went up really quick, down really quick. And I feel like we're kind of seeing, similar to what happened in July, where it's, not a ton of houses are selling at or above asking price. A lot of them are selling, below or just sitting on the market for a good while. So in the very, very, very short term, that's kind of what we've been seeing.
So would you say that it's more common for, let's take out some of these unicorns that are, perfect house, perfect condition, perfect neighborhood. But, we've come from an environment where if you listed a house, it would be under contract in, let's just call it 2 to 7 days. What would you say is kind of the average time that you're actually seeing a house set on the market pre-contract now?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head what the data actually says, but I would say if you are not, not a unicorn and not the opposite of a unicorn, like a good or a bad unicorn, if you're kind of more in the middle, you're probably looking at least a couple of weeks, right? Like I have I don't want to name them specifically, but have some, listings that are a little more unique where it's a very particular kind of buyer. Those ones are sitting for a long, long time. Or if you have the ones that are, right next to Camden Indoor Stadium and everybody has to be right there, those ones might go super quickly. But I think as long as you're not in the middle, I would think, even if it's a really nice house, going to sit for at least a couple of weeks on the market. Now, granted, that could be short-lived. We're, approaching the fourth quarter of the year. This is, it's, I guess the last couple of years been a slower time in the market. So, I mean, it could switch in a couple of months once we hit January, February. But as far as right now, I'd say most of them are sitting for at least a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Now, when you mentioned homes by Camden Indoor Stadium, I believe those are called tents, correct?
You could call it that. It's temporary housing, closer to maybe a mobile home than it is a single house. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
So we're noticing that trend kind of across Carolinas, right? Where homes are sitting a little bit longer. When we're talking to buyers out there in the market, a lot of their concern has been for several years and still continues is higher interest rates. So how do you prep, in particular, probably first time home buyers, but also maybe that person who's moving up and giving up a 3% mortgage rate from COVID to take on that slightly higher rate?
It's a good question, and I think, to be completely honest, I probably don't have that conversation hardly at all, right? Because I think there's nothing that I can really say or do that's going to make somebody feel better. And my job is not to make them feel better. It's not to be like, hey, pat them on the back. Things are going to be okay. Rates are higher. Sure, that sucks, but it's going to be okay. It's more of, whenever somebody's ready, you kind of have a lot of people who have these golden handcuffs where they feel like they just can't move, but it's such a great thing because they have such a low rate or such a low payment. So it's, once that person's really financially ready, whenever that is, there's nothing that I can say to change that timeline in a positive or negative way. So it's really whenever they're ready. And, kind of like the days of $1,500 a month mortgage payments are kind of gone, right? So it is kind of just the reality that we're in. And I think too that at the end of the day, I probably know more than the average person when it comes to what makes rates go up and down, but I still know literally nothing, right? If I knew what rates were going to do, I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. I'd be, season ticket holder at Camden Indoor and then speaking in Chennai, Mexico. But no, it's I have no idea what's going to happen. So and interest rates are obviously not the only driving factor. That's one of the
Right.
bigger factors where if interest rates got cut in half, sure, you would see demand surge, but that's not the only thing. So at least for me, I think there's not a whole lot that I say if somebody's like, hey, it's a little too expensive right now, or um, rates I think are a little too high. We can have a conversation and maybe try to identify where their pain point is. Like if it's like, okay, well, once rates get below 6, then I'm
Mhm.
going to buy it. If it's like, I just feel like it's overall too expensive. I can't afford, a house right now. That's a different conversation. But at the end of the day, it's not really me trying to convince anybody. It's just, you know, rates kind of are what they are. We can maybe use some data to get a, good guesstimate on what we think might happen. But at the end of the day, we have no clue, what the market's going to do. We have no clue what rates are going to do. We have no clue what affordability is going to be. So it's really whenever you're ready, right? Ready could be, I bought this 1,200 square foot townhouse. I have one kid and I have another kid on the way. And like, yeah, it's going to absolutely suck to go from 1,300 a month to 2,800 a month, but I have to do it because I have a kid coming on the way and we just simply can't be here. Or hey, shoot, I just started a business and I make so much more money now. Now I can afford it. So it's nothing that I'm going to say is going to make people go, oh yeah, it makes sense to drop my X payment to go for this payment.
Right.
Or even just buy in general. So I really honestly don't talk too much about, rates and where they're headed. It's just the matter of the fact is this is the rate. Either you want it or you don't.
Right. That's what the market's bearing today. Life continues to go on, right? We talk about the D's all the time: death, divorce, diamonds, diapers, diplomas, all these things that, hey, life happens, right? And sometimes we have to make a move to better our families, right? So makes a lot of sense. From a strategy perspective, is there anything in particular that, whether you're on the listing side or the buyer side here, where you're maybe educating a seller to say, hey, if we're talking about maybe reducing our price 10 or 15,000 here, is there a strategy you're talking about on trying to help affordability more by using that money in other manners?
Yes, but I feel like at the end of the day, there's only so much you can really do. Because in terms of affordability, right, one way that you can do it, which we have one going right now, which is the 2-to-1 buy down, offering that to potential buyers, where it's like, hey, if you go under contract and use, my preferred lender, the seller will, buy down your rate 2% for the first year, 1% for the second year, just in the hopes of either making it easier for you in the first couple of years, kind of recoup some of your down payment. Now you're in a better position come year 3, or maybe rates drop, you get a lower rate the first 2 years, and then poof, you refi, you never even had to sniff that 6.5 rate. The problem is that I've honestly found with that, you wouldn't believe how many people don't read descriptions at all. So how many people, you can literally make it in bold letters at the very, very start, and all they're going to look at is the pictures. So when they inquire and you're like, hey, like, is the 2-to-1 buy down of interest to you? What buy down? What do you mean?
Yeah.
So I think what's the most important is, knowing your data as far as what the other ones are selling for, knowing your trends, and really just putting the house in the best condition as you possibly can. And I'm not somebody who likes to go in there and just spend, right? Because I could
Right.
easily walk in every house and be like, you got to repaint, you got to refloor, you got to re-roof, you got to redo this. It's like that obviously is going to help, but is that going to get you a return on your money, or do people even have the cash to do that? Maybe not. So it's really focusing on the things that are easily controllable. Just like, for example, you'd be shocked how many people walk in and say, I'm not buying a house because it needs to be repainted. The seller could literally say, I will give you money so you can do it in full. I have a quote in hand. All you have to do is text the painter, I want this color, and get it done after closing. They're like, nope, I don't want to do it. So it's, just making sure that you can address as many of those roadblocks before, so that people can't say, but this, but that, but this, within reason, right? Like I wouldn't tell somebody, probably to replace a roof necessarily, unless it was just atrocious, because that's like 10 grand down the drain.
Right.
But really just making sure you're putting your best foot forward when it comes to pricing. You're not being ignorant with pricing. And then 2, conditions as good as you can control it with, like, mulch, or, edging up the lawn, or, whatever it is, it's cheaper and easier to take care of without having to, say, renovate a bathroom.
Cool. So we wouldn't be talking Raleigh if we didn't talk ITB and OTB. So for those listening that maybe aren't familiar, can you describe what those two things are, and then maybe some differences you see and pricing from location standpoints in Raleigh?
Yeah. So Raleigh has a belt line. It's I don't know the exact mileage, but I mean, the top of the belt line is kind of where North Hills is. And so anybody who's familiar with Raleigh would know where North Hills is. I'd probably say it's maybe a 10-minute drive from downtown Raleigh up to the Beltline. So it's a really kind of small area. And I would say on the northwestern to northeastern side, kind of like the top half of inside 440s inside the Beltline. And outside the Beltline is obviously everything outside of it. Inside the Beltline is ridiculously more expensive. They are either completely old, built in the 1940s, 50s, 60s houses, or they're houses that got tore down and they put up 3,500 square foot, $3 million houses. So I personally, I have never really understood the, massive appeal of inside the Beltline. And it's funny I say that because the first place that I bought was actually inside the Beltline. That's because I bought it when I was like 25 or 24. So it's like I wanted to be close to things, but everybody who wants to be inside the Beltline is just hell bent on, kind of being, truthfully just kind of part of the clique, I guess, of like, oh, I live inside the Beltline, but also being close to 5 Points and, a lot of those neighborhoods that are just, really sought after. And obviously once you get outside of the Beltline now, North Hills is kind of your exemption where, North Hills is kind of where all the money's pouring into. Now there's a ton of, obviously commercial development, but then there's a lot of like, I think there's actually a house for sale in North Hills that's like $6 million, which is insane for Raleigh. So once you kind of get outside of that, like that's the one kind of pocket that maybe doesn't apply. But I mean, if you go 10 minutes north of the Beltline, you're paying, probably 50% less per square foot than you would, inside the Beltline. Those are just obviously made up numbers off the top of my head, but it's just cheaper.
Like all good statistics are. So that makes sense, right? Like, hey, you can still be close. You can still get a good house. You can still be close enough on a commute to all of these things. So yeah, I appreciate you clarifying all that. Let's pivot here a little bit, Sam. So obviously a ton of families helped in a relatively short amount of time within 7 years. So I want to focus on your process when working with your clients. So how do you define great service to your clients?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say above all, I think it is educating somebody about everything that's going to happen before it happens. Because obviously like responsiveness is very important. Like I try to respond to people right away. But I just think that like getting ahead of like me scheduling showings whenever you want. Cool. That's great. Or like me, like writing your offer, like that's great. Like that's good service. Sure. But I think the bigger thing about service is making you, or if I had to boil it down to one way to say it, I would say it is preventing you from making one of the biggest mistakes of your life, right? Our biggest financial mistakes of your life. That could be, over like just in terms of, I'll give you one example. I had a listing a couple of months ago. It was a hot house where we had, 3 offers, I think, in total. But obviously in North Carolina, we have that due diligence fee. And so the buyer put $50,000 down. And so we maybe could have squeezed out more money out of another offer. And they were kind of putting pressure on us quick. But we're like, okay, well, it's $50,000 due diligence. Like we know for a fact they're not walking away. And at $50,000, we don't have to do anything. Because as a seller, everything's as is. And no matter what you put on that property disclosure, the property disclosure, you can't lie, but is your best knowledge as to what the condition of the house is. So in order for me to be misrepresenting on that disclosure, the seller or the buyer has to prove that I knew about something and lied about it, which like is virtually impossible. So if the seller fills it out truthfully, you can't do anything. So they gave us the $50,000, and long story short, they found mold inside the HVAC and like in the duct, which like there's literally no way that we could have known that. Right. But they were ignorant enough to give us $50,000 due diligence. So then when we said, hey, we're not going to fix anything, they got all up in arms. They got all hell bent. They like screamed misrepresentation, like we're threatening to take us to the commission, but we were kind of just chilling, knowing that like we did literally nothing wrong. Right. So that's obviously one rare example. Like not many agents are sitting here telling their buyers to go 50K due diligence, but it's like getting ahead of things so that you don't go under contract and be like, well, wait, the seller said that there's no issue with the roof and it's actually leaking. Like they're liable, Sam. Like, no, chances are they're probably not. So it's getting ahead of that. Like, hey, by the way, here's how the disclosure actually functions. Here's how your deposit functions. Whatever you see online in terms of how to buy a house is probably true in 45 states, but we're one of the handful where the rules are a little bit different. So I think it's getting ahead of those things so people are fully aware of everything, every single thing that they're doing. That can be process-wise. That can also be like layout-wise. The Just like, if you had a super sloped backyard, or if you had that's just the first thing that comes to my mind. Or like there was one house that I saw a couple of years ago. I don't know why I remember it, but it was a house in North Raleigh. It maybe had like 1,800 square feet. So it's a big house, but not a huge house. Had the primary bedroom on the first floor, and the master bathroom was the only bathroom downstairs, and it was directly off the kitchen. So I could have literally been flipping eggs and pissing in my toilet at the same time. That was just the layout that like most people are not going to want, because they're going to go, okay, well, it's literally right next to my kitchen. Like that's a little too close. I'd probably want to have like a half bath somewhere. And that's all relative, right? If you have that inside the belt line, nobody's going to care, right? Just because it's like they want the dirt more than that. But if you're in like Clayton, might make an impact. So it's getting ahead of all of those things so that, it's never going to be a situation where Sam didn't tell me this could happen, or Sam didn't warn me about this. I think that to me is the best service you can have. It's not about, in terms of like finding somebody a house, like this isn't 1985, right? Like we have Zillow, we're aware of that. Like I will 100% help you find a house. That is obviously part of my job. But if all you can say about me is, oh, Sam found me a great house, I didn't do my job. Because it's like, how hard has it been for you to find that house on Zillow, right? Mine's more of the, process, making sure that you're kind of staying out of your own way, making you aware of every decision that you're about to make, but then also like kind of taking the blinders off for you too. Sometimes you can fall in love with the kitchen or the neighborhood and completely ignore another aspect of the property that's just really not that appealing, and that will probably bite you in the butt whenever you go to sell it, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
So protection of the assets incredibly important. The educational piece, and then the core functions of being the real estate agent, right? Like, of course, I'm going to write your offer. Of course, I'm going to show you homes. Yeah, no, I think that's huge, right? Because, like you said, this is the largest financial decision that the majority of Americans make year in and year out, is related to housing. So keeping an eye out for that asset's really important. And then also being, your experience being able to walk into a house and say, this is wrong, this is an issue here, here's an issue here, where a lot of times people do just fall in love with the kitchen or the living room and see the space. So awesome,
and
man.
On that note too, I think one thing that like I try to pride myself on, like I don't think at the end of the day anybody really cares how many houses you sell. Like it does matter, right? Because it shows how much you're actually in the business. But for me, I've only had one singular buyer termination. I think I had 75 in a row before I had one terminate. I think it was late last year, and it was a no due diligence fee transaction. So it was a lot riskier, and we knew that, but we're like, look, we don't have any due diligence money. So, we don't really have a ton of risk. And then ironically, the seller did misrepresent on that one. So we got our money back, or we got our inspection money back. But I mean, that one, if you want to count it, sure. But if you don't count that my last buyer termination was like April of 2021. So I've had 4 years in a row of 75, probably at this point, 80, 85 in a row, excluding the one where the seller misrepresented, and they obviously were made whole. I've had that many in a row where the buyer didn't terminate. So it's not that I'm trying to force deals through. It's more that I'm getting people prepared for what's about to happen so that they don't go under contract and panic because of something that we found, which we could have very easily found before. Now they're losing their inspection money, appraisal money, and then up maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 and the DD fee.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Like protecting the money, I think is so important for buyers because of the non-refundable due diligence fee that we have in North Carolina. So let's focus on first-time home buyers a little bit too here, right? When you're putting your name out on a referral, and I think a lot of times first-time home buyers are really surprised to get a feel for, oh my gosh, it's not just me and Sam, working this transaction. There's 4, 5, 6, 8 different people sometimes that are touching a transaction. How do you go about kind of vetting the people that you refer your clients to prior to doing that?
Yeah, I think just kind of, giving people a shot over the years. And a lot of times it comes through, like if it's a new person, it comes through a lot of my colleagues. So I would say I'm very rare to like find somebody and give them a chance first with one of my clients. Like, for example, I found a painter the other day, super cheap, older guy, nicest guy, but like I wanted to use him, myself first. So he painted like, 2 of our rooms before I would feel comfortable giving him to somebody else. So I think it's really just that, and knowing that the vendors that I have, whether it's a lender, whether it's a painter, roofer, like they are an extension of me. So I take that unbelievably seriously. So I think if somebody, doesn't do something the exact right way, and like mistakes happen, right? I'm not saying that the job has to be perfect every time, but like something character-wise or maybe communication-wise that they drop the ball on something they shouldn't have, like that is a complete, or completely unacceptable to me. So I run a very tight ship when it comes to those things.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Someone buys a house. You've done a great job for them. Maybe that was a 3 to 6 month process that you were with them. What does it look like post-closing? How do you continue to help your clients post-closing, continue to protect the asset into the future?
Yeah, so I would say we try to stay in touch with them just like with a number of different ways that we have at my firm, whether it's like the Durham Bulls games or we'll have like, back to school raffles and things like that. So we try to stay in touch that way. In terms of maintaining, I would say I don't do a ton of like outbound communication where it's like, hey, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that. I feel like I honestly have a good enough of a relationship with most of my clients after we close that we kind of have an open line of communication for years. So, it's, they might ask me questions or they might ask, hey, what do I do here? What do I do here? So that's probably the full extent. Like, I'm not really, if that was kind of the question, I'm not, and it's maybe something I should be doing, like, hey, change your daggum air filters every, or like one thing that I want to tell people more of is like, I think one of the biggest problems I see when people go to sell is landscaping, because landscaping is not like, you can obviously fix it like that, but it's unbelievably expensive to, say put sod in, rip out your entire lawn or, whatever. I think the one thing that I want to make people more aware of, so it's easier for both of us whenever you go to sell, it's like, hey, don't wait till later to get started on your yard. Start on your yard now so your yard is looking pristine. That is one of the cheapest and easiest ways, relatively speaking, right? We're not talking about $15,000 on a bathroom, where if you have, good grass, you have nice mulch, you have whatever, like that's going to make your house that much more appealing. Maybe it won't sell for more, but it'll sell faster. Because somebody's going to go, I don't have to do anything here. It's not just, crabgrass like is in the back of my yard that I'm, fighting every single day. But I should do more of that. I don't do as much as I would like to now, but it's something I'll certainly implement in the future.
But super solid advice at the same time. You said it earlier on our talk of, hey, people don't usually read the description, right? So we got to make the picture sexy. We got to make the curb appeal good. And right. That's a great piece. So, all right, one more question surrounding your past clients. Put yourself in the shoes of one of your past clients, maybe your favorites. What would they say about Sam Duncan if they were asked?
I would say that I am not first and foremost a real estate broker. I feel like I'm a normal guy who just happens to know a lot about real estate. So I think, what I try to make it be is whenever I'm like with somebody, that whether I'm talking to them on the phone, like we're working through the buyer process or we're selling, whatever it is, I want it to feel like you're getting Sam, like me, who I am as a real person. It's not like, oh, when you're with me, I have my business hat on and then we leave and now my business hat is off. Like I'm the same way through and through. So I think people like, I want people to really feel like they can come to me for genuine advice, where it's not just like, well, Sam's going to tell me to go higher. Sam's going to tell me to do this. And of course, Sam's going to tell me something to, make me feel good or whatever. Like I'm very blunt with people in good and bad ways. And so I think the biggest thing really would just be that they feel like they're legitimately talking to a friend and that I honestly have no emotional, weight, if that's the right way to say it, in the outcome, where it's like, I want to do my absolute best job. I want to see them get the result that they want, but like never in a million years am I doing anything that makes me get the end result. So it's like I've completely detached myself from that. So if somebody says, hey, I like this house, but I want to go 100 over or 100 under, I'm like, fine, I don't really care. Like it is what it is. Like you're going to buy a house at some point, rather than being like 100 under, like they're not going to accept that. Like, sure, I'll probably tell them, hey, seller's probably not going to take this. If this is what you want to do, let's do it. But that's just the biggest thing, that I'm completely transparent, completely truthful, and they feel like they're getting the legitimate Sam every time that you see them, and that I'm just, more of like a friend and just a regular dude who just happens to know real estate, rather than like my whole entire personality is that I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's probably speaks to your success, right? Like people work with people who are not fake and genuine. They want to work with people that they feel like they can confide anything in. So. All right, right. Let's end it with a couple fun rapid fire questions here for you. Favorite restaurant in Raleigh?
Honestly, like I don't like eating out. As weird as that is to say, I really don't. So like I honestly don't have an answer.
All right, favorite thing to cook at home then?
Burgers.
Okay, there we go. we go American cheese, or we going opposite? We going flair on some cheese there.
I go probably, and I'm not joking, probably 5 days a week. I have a pound of ground beef put into burgers with American cheese on 2 of the burgers. So I do 3 patties and nothing else. Today I had rice. I was a little hungry, so I had burgers and rice. Like no buns, no condiments, nothing. So yeah, just a lot of meat.
That's why you look the way you do and I look the way I do, I guess. Do you know how to change a diaper yet?
No, I've watched the YouTube videos, but I will. It's going to be, I've tried to get my reps in. Like with the car seat, I've gotten my reps putting it in and out. But like with the changing the diaper, I don't have a doll to use. So we're going to be, it's going to be like Baker Mayfield when he got traded to the Rams and he had 3 days of preparation before he, got put in. That's how I'm going to feel when I change my first diaper.
Well, here we are. You'll be doing it in no time. All right. Last question. Everyone's dying to know this. You brought it up a couple times. Is John Shire finally going to take the Dukies to the promised land this year?
I would like to say yes, but the thing is, I love Duke with all my heart, but they absolutely ripped my heart out and stomped on it last year, to the point where it's like I kind of got cheated on in a relationship, and I'm like wanting to get to a relationship, but I'm kind of guarding myself. So Cam Boozer's looking pretty cute. Like I don't know, he's playing it, but no, they'll be good. I don't know, they won't be as good as last year. Like I can think we can confidently say that. But again, you don't have to be better than last year to win. Right. So as long as I think one of the key guys will be Dame Sarr. Like if he can be a real solid contributor, not just a potential guy who's like, oh well, he's long, athletic, maybe not great in college, but he's going to be good in 5 years. If he can be really good now, alongside maybe Foster and Isaiah Evans, kind of taking a little bit of a leap, could be pretty scary. But we'll have to see.
Cautiously optimistic Duke fan in a town surrounded by Wolfpack fans and Tar Heel fans. So good on you, Sam.
I'm an NC State fan because I hate UNC that much. I'm big NC State do well, so then because I know how mad it makes UNC fans.
Well, we might cut this clip out to protect you a little bit there, but Sam, appreciate you joining us, man. Thanks so much. Thanks for your insight into what's going on there, and we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.